up? Yeah. Yeah.
Kane is in the building.
Yeah. Already the show goes on all night. Till the morning we dream so long. Anybody ever wonder when they would see the sun? Just remember when you come up. The show goes on. Already the show goes on all night. Till the morning we dream so long. Anybody ever wonder when they would see the sun? Just remember when you come up. The show goes on.
Have you ever had the feeling that you was being had? Don't that shit that make you mad? They treat you like a slave, put chains all on your soul and put whips up on your back. They be lying through they teeth, hope you slip up off your path. I don't switch up, I just laugh, put my kicks up on they desk, unaffected by...
Thank you guys for joining us for another episode of State of the Jungle, presented by First Star Logistics. I'm your host, Malik Wright, joined by my co-host. We've got Evan McPhillips to my left, Daniel Almeida to my right, Logan Fulmer to my far right. And guys, this is a new era. It's a new era of State of the Jungle. It's a new era here live in the new minted First Star Logistics studio. And we got a chance to break this bad boy open on Friday at the live draft stream, second annual live draft stream party presented by First Star Logistics, which was awesome. We were joined by Brad Johansson, Dave Lapham, Joe Goodberry. Evan was on the ones and twos, right? We had Daniel, we had Logan coming in for a segment. But even though the location has changed, we're still going to be the most unhinged Bengals show. We're still going to probably fight like cats and dogs. I'm a little scared, to be honest with you guys, because I'm a little closer to Logan, to Evan now. And so that means the sparring that we used to do from the big table, we might not do. We might do it, but we might. We might need a Dana White in the middle of us or something like that to make sure we aren't going at each other's throats. But no, guys, we really appreciate you guys for joining every step of the way. And I gotta be honest with you guys. The more shows we do, the more things that we do, you guys get a chance to see how badass this studio truly is. But keeping it on that, the Bengals just finished up their 2024 NFL draft. They made some good picks. They took some swings on some guys that have high upside and maybe didn't show a lot in college, or maybe we were hoping to see more. They took some chances out there. There may have been a reach or two in the draft. I have no idea. But what is an NFL draft if you don't have a reach? Daniel, what are your thoughts? What are you excited about the new First Star Logistics studio? Then I'm going to Logan. Then I'm going to go to Evan.
I mean, we feel so official, to be honest. I mean, up here we got our headsets going on. So, I mean, I'm excited. We're all pretty close. I mean, it's I'm excited. So it's a beautiful studio. We got a nice little AC going on in here, and next to Logan, Malik, and Evan. So I'm excited, man.
Yeah, I mean, it's the old saying: you look good, you feel good, you play good.
Nobody ever said you look good, Logan.
Well, we look good as a group, as a collective. The studio looks good. Everything about the new First Star facility is awesome, and just not that we need any more extra motivation for the show, but man, this nice place certainly helps.
Man, you got the single shot too, man. Look at you, man. You're shining.
There you go.
You're shining.
Doing my best.
And we got to go with our residential guru with all the PFF stats, the analytics, the data. The 97th percentile. We got to go to Evan.
97th percentile.
97th percentile.
Got to hit that base.
Man, Evan. So talk to me. What are you excited about with the new studio? What are you excited about the new era of State of the Jungle, man?
I mean, new backdrop, beautiful studio. Like Daniel said, we're looking real official here. This is real nice, real comfortable. I actually got a desk now that I can have the laptop on and have all my stat access as opposed to trying to balance it on my knees a little bit. So I'm really excited about that.
And so many people are responsible for the success of this show, success of this new studio. Shout out to Mr. Dave Burke. Shout out to Mason. Man, you guys did a great job, Isaac. Man, we appreciate you guys. But there's one guy that I want to thank who doesn't like a lot of praise. Yeah. He does not like a lot of praise. He's quiet. He's very humble. And that's the CEO of First Star Logistics, Mr. Kevin Bernhardt. Man, we want to thank you so much, because without you, none of this is possible. This is a kick-ass studio. We're excited to be here. But guys, without further ado, let's jump right into the discussion. I've talked a lot about the draft, man. I've talked a lot about the draft. Given my opinion, my take, whether it be on the Amarius Mims pick, all the way to the undrafted free agency signing of Austin McNamara, who I'm pumped about. I love everything about football. I'm excited about even the special team side of things. But let's start with that first pick that the Cincinnati Bengals made. The Cincinnati Bengals went out and they took they did it. They went out and they took Amarius Mims with the first pick in the NFL draft at 18th overall. Logan.
Yep.
We've been highlighting you a little bit on the show. We're gonna keep highlighting you. We want to hear from you. What were your thoughts on the pick of Amarius Mims? We know you like your big guys. We know you like your trenches, your hog mollies. So let's talk to you.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing, and I mean, really pretty much the only thing everybody brings up with Mims is just a lack of playing time. And Evan has addressed that time and time again. But again, I feel like that's truly, really the only missing thing in his profile. I think the Bengals even alluded to it when they drafted him and when they interviewed like Zach Taylor and company afterwards. It's just they believed if this guy played more games, he wouldn't be there. And I think that's true. It kind of maybe sounds a little cliche just to say because, oh, yeah, we drafted him. Of course, they're going to talk highly about their guy, but the athleticism is there, the PFF grades are there, the pass blocking's there. Maybe you want to see him be a little more better as a run blocker since he's so athletic, but there are so many positives that he brings to the table, and it's just such a sigh of relief to see the organization bring in an offensive lineman that checks so many boxes and that is finally an elite athlete. Like that just raises the floor of the offensive lineman so much. This team has not had an athletic offensive lineman in what feels like a decade. So just have a guy that just commands the room. And we all saw him walking around with Orlando Brown Jr. And as soon as he got drafted, like he made him look small. And that's a 6'8" man. Like he's an unbelievable man, unbelievable athlete, huge dude. He does so many good things on the football field. Again, the only thing is he didn't play that many games, but when he was out there, he was pretty damn good. And I really think that's all that matters.
Daniel.
I mean, when we talk about Amarius Mims, I'll be honest, I've come around to this. I am a huge fan of the Amarius Mims pick. And I keep going back to genuinely, what is your alternative? Right. If you're sitting there at pick number 18, the only guy I can truly point to is a Jared Verse. And I do think Jared Verse is going to be a stud with the Rams. I talked about, potentially we think he could be, defensive rookie of the year. I think Jared Verse is going to be a stud. Besides that, I'm happy Graham Barton wasn't the pick. I'm happy Troy Fautanu wasn't the pick. And Jerzon Newton clearly fell to the second round for some reason. So I'm a huge fan of the pick for Amarius Mims. Yes, I think Jared Verse would have been a stud. But that raised a lot more questions in the Bengals room. And I'm not sure if they would have been super confident, with the edge room right now. So Amarius Mims, he has all the makings. When you turn on the film, the dude has the potential to truly be a starting right tackle. So it just really is. What's your alternative? It was Jared Verse. But if it wasn't Verse, I'm glad that they got with the potential with Amarius Mims.
I mean, we spent a long time in the draft process talking about the defensive tackles, and we didn't get to see because Byron Murphy went the pick before us. But maybe they didn't get him, but it seems like maybe they would have went Mims anyway. They seem to be super, super, super pumped about that pick. Again, maybe they just aren't going to say they wanted Byron Murphy instead, but I mean, there seems to be a lot of excitement about a number of picks in this draft, and it started off well with Amarius Mims.
Evan, the floor is yours, man.
Man, it felt like a lot through the process that Amarius Mims was like my guy because I kept going to bat for him, trying to legitimize him as an option there. And I understand everybody feeling a little trepidatious, a little fearful about.
Say that word again.
A little trepidatious.
Can you spell that?
Spell it. I could once upon a time when I was a little more
No
polished
shot.
in my actual reading days, but now I'd be reading a lot more scouting reports and everything else nowadays. But no, with Amarius Mims, man, I've talked about it. What can I say that I haven't already said in previous draft shows? I talked about why the injuries seem more of like he was on the way to rehab and had setbacks at periodic spots while he was still weak in the ligaments and everything else in that recovering leg. So everything kind of being in one spot kind of makes me think that once he's healthy, once he's fully rehabbed, everything's going to be just fine with him. And he's going to be able to reach the level of play that he displayed at Georgia and exceed that, because this is a guy who really has the untapped potential. He's still young, doesn't have the starts, but besides that, he still looks technically sound. He still shows you a lot of high level of play and gives you more hope that he can use his measurables a little bit better as he gets into the NFL to develop to be a better run blocker, to be a more consistent pass rush protector. And a lot of that, like you said, is not rawness and technique as much as it is just experience and kind of getting a feel for things a little bit better and finding more consistency in the game. And I think he will be able to do that. And I mean, it's not unreasonable to think if he hits the ground running in camp that he could end up being the starter day one. And like we've talked about many times, Trent Brown's health is obviously he's missed time almost every season he's been in.
Yeah.
It's like 66% of the seasons he's played in, and he's ended up missing significant time. So I understand people's concerns that you don't want to just redshirt your first round pick again, but like you said, otherwise, who are you taking there? I mean, you're taking Johnny Newton, but again, you're sharing all these 3-tech snaps, and you're going to be rotating in, and so he's still going to be playing 500-600 snaps. I still would bet that Mims plays at least 300 some odd snaps or more, and unless you were talking about a wide receiver or a Quinyon Mitchell, there's no one who was going to play more than 500-600 snaps for you. So I don't think that Mims is a sunk cost because of that. Sure, there's risk, but the upside, the profile that you get here, if he stays in college and stays healthy, this guy's a top 5, top 10 pick.
You know, we're getting someone pretty pissed at us in the comment section. He said,
"Oh goodness,
it's our first round pick. Get his name right."
Amarius.
So we apologize to you, Martin. Apologize so profusely. Apologize. We didn't realize that we were pronunciating his name. It's
been a long draw process. We're gonna have some habits to break on a couple of these guys for sure.
But for sure, we definitely don't want to lose our jobs with pronouncing his name wrong. Yeah. So, but I also want to give a shout out to already somebody with the comment of the day, and it's TZA. He says, Mims is a damn embassy. That is the comment of the day, man. But I've kind of given my thoughts on the Mims pick.
It was an A pick.
A pick. No, I think it was a good pick. Obviously with some of the names that were on the board when you first heard the sting, it was like, man, you guys know how bad I love Jared Verse. You guys know I was a Jared Verse guy through and through. I told Marissa, our producer, about him, and and I was really pumped up about the potential addition of that. Obviously, the Bengals didn't necessarily have a need at edge because their edge room would have been crowded. And this is a nod, right? The Bengals, this is a nod to their edge rushing class, with them saying, we believe in Joseph Assad. We believe in Miles Murphy. I'm almost calling him his brother. Oh my God.
Shout out to you.
That's bad. Shout out you. But no, the Bengals obviously gave a nod to the edge rushing room and said, hey, we're pretty comfortable where we are. We want to invest in the future of the offensive line. So that is a thing that they did. So you got to be happy about the pick. You like what you have seen on film. I think that everybody's, the collective holding of breaths came from, did we just draft a guy that we don't have enough film out on? Yeah. I think that was the thing. I don't think anybody had an issue with what they actually saw on film. And I'm seeing a lot of the comparisons. People are saying, well, he could be another Munoz. He could be another Anthony Munoz. Now, I don't want to put that type of pressure on him yet, comparing him to one of the greatest tackles in football history, if not the greatest tackle in football history. But I do think that this could wind up being a very, very good pick for the Bengals. I understand why they made it. There have been so many bad offensive line picks that have come through here, whether it be the Cedric Ogbuehi of the world, the Jake Fisher of the world. Obviously, Jonah Williams didn't live up to the billing that everybody had. Maybe he could turn his career around. But all in all, you'd like to think that what Mims showed in college, he can replicate that in the NFL, but stay on the football field a lot more. So all in all, I like the pick. I understand the pick. I'm okay with the pick. Everybody got anything else to say about it before we move on? All right, let's move on then. The next pick is a pick that I love. It's a pick that I've been really high on, and I've been high on it weeks before we drafted him. And I talked to one of my peoples about it, and they said, "No, I don't want the Bengals to draft him." Well, they did. They did. Chris Jenkins from the University of Michigan is a beast. I think that this is a pick that could make sense in the long run for the Bengals. I love that the fact that they remade their entire defensive line, but Daniel, I want to hear what your thoughts are. I'm going to go Daniel, I'm going to go Evan, and then I'm going to go Logan.
Chris Jenkins is a pick of, I think this really shows how the Bengals like to draft now. And we discussed a little bit how this fits a need as well as it was a talented player. And I truly believe that how the Bengals were viewing is, hey, we know we need to add to the defense tackle room. Sweat's off the board. Who do we go with, right? Are we going to go with a pass rush specialist in Michael Hall? Are we going to wait to the 4th round? Are we going to go with a guy like Dwayne Carter? And I think that they were sold on, number one, the person, right? That's clear. All Bengals fans are, starting to see it on social media. But they're first off confident in the person. And even through my scouting process too, just having NFL bloodline as well is a huge thing. Obviously, his dad was a great defense tackle in the NFL. So Chris Jenkins, we know he was the leader. We know he was super consistent. That's what I'm most confident in, right? This isn't a super high ceiling draft pick. Like, you're not shooting for the moon. He potentially could be an absolute star, but I think his floor is what makes me super confident, super happy with this pick, because you're getting the floor of a dude who's an absolutely great run stopper. But to be honest, when I turn on the film, it wasn't even the run stopping that got me. It really was, he showed some flash in his pass rush moves. That's what caught my eye, in my opinion. It wasn't even the run stopping. That my first watch was like, he's not really a great run stopper. The first like 5 snaps I watched, it was like his explosiveness off the ball in pass rushing was definitely the first thing caught my eye. But my real thoughts on this is, it's a super consistent pick. It's a high floor pick, and the dude is young and he's got a lot of potential. So it fits a need. And I think it's a solid pick in round 2.
What were your thoughts on the Chris Jenkins pick, man?
Yeah, I like the Chris Jenkins pick. Actually, I liked him better than Braden Fisk, Ruka Rohoro for the Bengals, and they all went in front of him. And in another questionable move, Atlanta traded up to get him, which is interesting draft for Atlanta. But we can talk about that later. But
But you were a Root guy?
No.
Oh, okay. Neither was I.
At 50, but like trading up for him, that's
that was wild.
Right. Yeah. So anyways, Chris Jenkins, great athletic testing, 6'3", good arm length, 78th percentile there. The weight was 299, but that's a little undersized for what you're probably hoping for, but he's so strong for his size, like pound for pound, one of the strongest dudes. 99th percentile in run stop rate. One of the best that you've seen, that PFF has seen since 2014 when they started doing college grading. So that just speaks to what he can do as a run stopper, despite having a little bit of a smaller stature than we were traditionally used to. And Daniel mentioned it, NFL bloodlines, and he tested with great athleticism and good lateral agility that kind of demonstrates that there might be more untapped potential as a pass rusher there if he can really just pin his ears back and use that athleticism and kind of develop a little bit more on the pass rush move front. I definitely think there's plenty of reason to believe that he has more to offer there. And you heard Mike Potts, director of scouting for the Bengals, also kind of echoing those sentiments where they saw that there was more untapped potential with him. For that reason, they felt a lot more comfortable with him than maybe other people were with I don't want to say lack of pass production, because he was still winning at a top 20 rate out of 150 defensive tackles, but still definitely more there than I think he offered in college. And I think we're going to be able to see that impact his rookie year.
I agree. I think he didn't get the opportunity to really showcase what he could do at the college level. And when he did, you saw his ability to shed blocks. You saw his ability to hold his point of attack, especially in the run game. I think Chris Jenkins was a great pick. And that's why I was kind of eyeing him, because I was like, man, this guy looks like this is a guy. He's got a slimmer frame, right? He seems like he's in very, very good shape. He seems like he has that upside of the ability to rush the passer. I don't look at Chris Jenkins and just say, oh, yeah, he's a run stuffer. I really do believe he has the ability to rush the passer. And, I saw my guy, Drew Garrison, who's a huge Michigan fan. He said he may not have the sacks, but this is a guy that literally makes life hell for opposing quarterbacks. And when you turn on the film and you watch Chris Jenkins, you see that. You really do see that. And I'm sure as we get through this pro process and we talk more and more about the picks that the Bengals have made and sort of how they fit, I'm really curious to see how Lou, or as people call him, Ludini, is going to utilize the defensive tackle room, because now you have a crowded room. You have a crowded room. What happens with Zachary Carter? What happens with McKinley Jackson? What happens with BJ Hill? What happens with Sheldon Rankins? There's so many questions. Listen, there's a guy on the Bengals roster that I feel like we need to play even more, that I'm a fan of, by the way. I don't know if you guys are a fan of. I know he's a fan of. J2 Fele. That is a guy that I think can make plays for the Bengals. I don't know if he's one of the odd men out, but I like J2 Fele. I think the Bengals defensive tackle room is now crowded. And I like what Chris Jenkins says. I don't care where you put me on the defensive line, I'll perform. He said, hell, if they ask me to drop back in coverage, I'll perform. Now, listen, I wouldn't recommend that, even though I know you're probably excited because you caught an interception and you almost, ran it in for a touchdown. I wouldn't recommend doing that, but be careful what you ask for. I've seen Lou literally take defensive tackles like DJ Reader and drop him back in coverage. Lou, please don't do that for a guy like Chris Jenkins, but you just never know. You never know. Logan, what were your thoughts on the Chris Jenkins pick?
Yeah, I kind of wanted to continue to hit on something that you just said with, Chris Jenkins kind of echoing the sentiment that he's willing to play everywhere. And, a lot of people just really say that because they want to get on the football field or they believe, they can play all the way across the line. But, I was kind of going back today and just looking at Chris Jenkins, looking at some of the numbers, looking at the snap counts, whatever. And when you tally up the amount of snaps he played as like a 3-tech more versus a traditional defensive end or of an edge player, they're almost split evenly, which really, really, really surprised me. Because you kind of just looked at him the whole time as this 3-tech, this DT, this DT. But he truly does offer that versatility to play up and down the defensive line. Maybe he can be some, that early down edge run defender kind of guy. Maybe that's not necessarily what they're going to do, but he graded out higher on PFF when he did play on the edge versus when he played inside. It's a very slim margin, but still, it's just kind of very interesting to see that he had success both inside and outside, but that was a guy that nobody ever talked about as being able to play inside and outside. And you guys know how much I love versatility. So just to kind of see those numbers kind of add up the way they did, because when you look on it, 217 snaps last year on the interior and about 180 on the edge, like again, that's nearly 50-50 split, and he had success both inside and outside. And he's one of the strongest players in the draft class, and that's always going to help you in either facet of your game. He's just got to learn to play off of it now, and he will. Marion Hobby has developed these defense tackles very nicely, and I think Jenkins is another guy that has so much developmental upside there, and he's also, just like Daniel said, he's got a very high floor. Yep. He's going to be a great run defender regardless. But another thing that I loved about him, when just looking at the way he performed, his highest graded games all the way throughout college, his highest graded games this past year, his third highest and his fourth highest were both in the college football playoff and in the college football championship. So it's always good to see a player kind of rising to the occasion in the big moments. And obviously, as Bengals fans, we hope there are a lot of big moments, a lot of big games. If he's going to be a big game player, that's going to make the selection even better.
And one last thing, people are talking about, the speed of the NFL. That's something that most prospects, the ones that do get washed out, the ones that don't make a roster, is because the speed between college football and the NFL is different. A lot of people are saying those championship games, those playoff games, is the most replicable game to an NFL speed. And if you can get a guy that's had the experience of playing there, Chris Jenkins had high snap count in both those games. Give me a guy that's done it before. So he showed up in a big way there.
Yeah, if two of your highest graded games are against Alabama and Washington, you're probably going to be a pretty decent NFL player.
Big time players show up in big time games.
Right.
But let's move on to the Bengals' third round pick. One of their third round picks, everybody's favorite, and everybody had him mocked to the Cincinnati Bengals in this exact spot. Nobody was shocked when this happened. Everybody said, damn, the Bengals should even draft him in the second round if he's there. No, the Bengals then took McKinley Jackson, defensive tackle out of Mississippi State, nose tackle, I should say. I should be very specific when I say that. Nose tackle.
We skipped over our boy?
Who?
Roll Tide?
He was the second.
He was first.
He was the first third round pick?
Yeah.
What?
If they would have taken McKinley Jackson first, I would have probably thrown something.
All right. Okay. Correction. Sorry, it's been a long draft week. Correction. The Bengals drafted Jermaine Burton with the first pick in the third round. Listen, all third round picks sort of just fall together at the end of the day.
Third rounders.
But they drafted Jermaine Burton, man. They drafted Jermaine Burton. I've got a lot to say on this pick.
I was going to say, I think everything that you said still applies, though.
Everybody knew that this guy was going at this spot.
Right.
And they said the Bengals are going to pass up on Troy Franklin on the board, and they're going to draft Jermaine Burton. No, in all seriousness, though, the Bengals did take Jermaine Burton. And if you guys got an opportunity to if you got the opportunity to watch the live draft stream, you saw Evan and I's reaction. And our best friend is in the chat right now. The disc golf dad, he says Burton was an amazing pick. Now that they gave him 81, the vibes are so high now. We appreciate you. I'm being facetious, obviously. He said Burton was a wasted pick. Let me tell you why he's not a wasted pick. You talk about a game changer. You mean guys that literally, my guy Trevor Sikkema, my guy Damian Parsons, they literally talked about this guy and
Matt
raved about him.
Steve Palazzolo.
Oh my God, so many people.
You
literally had people saying he was their wide receiver 4 in this draft class.
4, wide receiver 7, and he went what?
So much praise.
8?
So guess what? People might not like the pick for whatever reason, whatever the hatred there is, but I can promise you right now, Jermaine Burton is a difference maker. And if you dislike him now, you'll love him by week 5.
Yep.
I think that guy is going to make a lot of plays. Maybe it's going to take you seeing Jermaine Burton make plays against Juice, or seeing Jermaine Burton make plays against what's his face, DJ Turner, or some other guy. Jermaine Burton is going to be a difference maker on this Bengals offense, and I think he landed in such a great spot, such a receiving friendly pick. I love the Jermaine Burton pick. I love it. 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 I think I'm pumped about it because we saw what he did at the University of Alabama with terrible. I won't say terrible, but not consistent quarterback play. We saw what he was able to do. I don't even think he had the opportunity to fully, run his entire full route tree. He was asked to catch go balls at the University of Alabama. And guess what? I think that Jermaine Burton is going to be a difference maker, man. I think he's going to be a difference maker, man. And you guys know I've been high on him. I was so high on him that during the War Room episode, I was crazy enough to draft him with the 49th overall pick.
Well, that was also before all the Dave Brugler beast came out and said people have him just completely off the draft boards and sometimes. But I mean, again, the only concerns you really have are the production, which again, like if you have that kind of concern with him, you have it with Lad McConkey. And again, why didn't he have the numbers that guys like Roma Dunze had? Because Roma Dunze had over 150 targets, whereas Jermaine Burton had 58. Yeah. Way different. A third of the targets. So that's trying to compare the raw stats that way. When you look at yards per target, Jermaine Burton was second, 14 yards per target. Yards per route run, he was 11th out of 109 receivers. So you're talking top 10% there. Average depth of target, 20.2. They were chucking it down the field to this man. And you want to say, oh, well, he didn't have a lot of yards after catch, so he doesn't have that ability. Yes, he does. He does. Go watch the highlights because a lot of these, 7 of those 40 catches he had on those targets because he's getting chucked down the field, 7 of those were touchdowns. There was not a lot of yak to be had when you're getting thrown the ball in the end zone, right? The other part of that is, too, when he did have the opportunity to create coming over the middle, he's catching in traffic. Doesn't matter how small he is. Catching back shoulder go balls because he is timing everything so well with his jump, his turn, getting his eyes around on the ball, and then high pointing it. He uses every bit of the length that he does have. He's not afraid to go over the middle. He can give you that deep slot option, the athleticism that you've been missing there, especially recently. And on top of that, he was 90th percentile in receiving grade versus single coverage versus man versus zone, yards per route run, 0 drops on all of these deep targets, the ones that are inherently hard to catch.
How many drops?
0 drops on all of these targets. So this is just like, hey guys, like again, if he doesn't have the character concerns, and again, we're not talking anything off field, right? We're talking about
can we talk about that? Because I feel like the discourse around Jermaine Burton has been absolutely,
it's been like he's gotten arrested multiple times. And look, I understand, again, he made a good point of, hey, I made a mistake in that Tennessee game, and within 2 weeks at the LSU game, the same thing happened. I was the first one off the field and in the locker room. You just want to see that kind of growth, and clearly they had the interviews with him multiple times. They felt really good about what he can offer them. And plus, like you said, if you have these guys, if you have a guy like a Dante Scarnecchia, and we talked about this on the live draft stream too, if you have a great receiving coach in Troy Walters, who has just gotten the most out of every receiver that's come through there, if you've got a great core in Jamar Chase and T. Higgins and other guys who have had to learn their way through the process, and Charlie Jones and Andre Yoshivas that can help relate to him and help him through his rookie process, when you've got Troy Walters, Joe Burrow, and all of these guys being leaders for your offense, this is the perfect environment for him to come in, do the work, have the good environment surrounding him to be the best he can be. And I think he's going to be a lot like Jordan Addison was for the Vikings last year, where you just see this guy catching 20-yard plays. He averaged almost 20 yards a catch. That means if he's throwing the ball, you're talking explosive play. His ability to get open in the intermediate, the deep. He's probably not the shiftiest short route guy, but he can still do all that stuff. But man, you want to talk about a guy who's going to make defenses pay for trying to run the too high shells, and you want to tear them up the seam. This is a guy who can do it just as well as anybody.
So I like the fact that Evan and I are sitting so close together right now.
We're here just feeding off each other's
but
energy
I mean, because I feel like out of like Daniel and Logan watch so much film, but I feel like me and Evan are the Jermaine Burton experts when it comes to being Roll Tide fans. Roll Tide.
Roll Tide.
I want to go a step further.
Yeah.
Can I cook, please?
Yeah. Go for it. Yeah.
I'm all for butchering false narratives. I'm all for that. And I want you to go to the wide shot here, Marissa, not just me, because I want this to be me and Evan right here. I want to butcher a couple of things real quick if I can. Let's talk about some stuff that has been said about Jermaine Burton. Okay, I've been kind of quiet on social media. I've let people cook. There's a couple of false narratives going out there. One of the ones I heard was, why so many schools? Are you referring to high school? Are we referring to high school?
I guess so.
Are we referring to high school? Because to me, I know guys that I went to high school with in my program at my high school in Montclair, New Jersey, was an established football program, and sometimes guys leave to get better opportunities.
When they move to different counties to be on better teams, or go to move somewhere else to stay with a relative so they can go to IMG.
Yeah,
right.
Chris Henry's Jr. just left his school to go to a better school in California, right? Right. So like that's known. Then people say, "Oh no! Why did he transfer from the University of Georgia?" Does it matter? The NIL and all these different things, it has changed the landscape of college football. These guys leave for opportunities if they feel like they're being misused. But it's not like he went from the University of Georgia.
Going to run first offense.
Yeah, it's not like he went from the University of Georgia to Syracuse.
Yeah,
he went to the University of Georgia to the University of Alabama. You want to know why? Because he was going to get more play time at the University of Alabama. Alabama had a need at wide receiver, especially having all these wide receivers leave and go to the NFL. But let's continue to chop down some of the narratives out there when it comes. Yeah.
Like we know through the recruiting process and even after, and sometimes in high school, coaches will say anything to get you signed up, to get you into the program. And then as soon as they do, they might recruit another guy. They might tell you, this is your spot. Coaches lie all the time.
All the time.
And that might have been, now look, is there oftentimes maybe that he didn't react well to certain situations that other people might have put their head down? Sure. But dude, I'm not going to knock you for what you did when you were 16 or 18.
100%.
Like your frontal lobe ain't even fully developed yet until you're like 24, 25 as a guy. All right. Like there is growth and maturity there. Sure. But these are all things that were addressed. The coaching staff all looked him in the eye and asked them, and were satisfied with his answer. You got to trust these guys if they were the ones who met with him face to face like that.
I'm not done. I got to keep cooking.
Keep going.
I got to keep. No, it's fine. Let's keep cooking. Another false narrative. Again, I'm all about destroying false narratives. Is Jermaine Burton did not produce in college as a freshman at Georgia. He had 404 yards, 3 touchdowns. To me, that's producing. Especially
last time they had a receiver go over, I think it was 750 yards. It wasn't a tight end. Was Pickens in 2015, 2016.
Yeah.
So that was almost 8 years ago. Even Lab McConkey didn't do it. Again, that's probably why he left. He said, "This is a low volume offense. I'm never going to shine here. I need a different opportunity."
His second year at Georgia as a sophomore, let's just round it up. He had 497 yards, but let's call it what it is. He had 500 yards and 5 touchdowns. Again, producing. At the University of Alabama as a junior, he had 677 yards, 7 touchdowns. His last year at Alabama, he had 800 yards and 8 touchdowns. So there's a narrative out there that
on 50 some odd targets.
On 50 some odd targets. So there's a narrative out there that Jermaine Burton didn't produce. And that's just not true.
When you look at his yards per target, you're talking second out of 39 receivers in the draft that qualify. That's when you look at it and you take how many targets he got into account. You tell me he didn't produce. I said he produced at the second highest rate of anybody. So I disagree entirely with that narrative.
Let's go even further. There's another narrative out there. Jermaine Burton is a slot receiver.
Played more snaps on the outside.
Wide.
He dominated. He dominated. He dominated. And he played more snaps outside. He made mincemeat of the competition. Let's go a step further. Jermaine Burton is small. Jermaine Burton's going to struggle against press. Jermaine Burton violated press coverage. It's the reason why Jermaine Burton went before Troy Franklin. Those were real concerns. Troy Franklin, 6'3", 170 pounds. And guess what? People said, what would that guy look like in the NFL when somebody's up in his chest pressing him? Would he fall back? What would happen? You ask everybody. Listen, the general public was more high on Troy Franklin than actual people, actual scouts inside the NFL than they were. But nobody that I spoke to was shocked that Jermaine Burton went ahead of Troy Franklin. That's the way that it always should have been.
I think that's a good point, too, because Troy Franklin, I know he was a favorite, but again, 76% of his routes were hitch, slant, go. That is an extremely limited route tree versus Jermaine Burton. He was running corners, crossers, posts, goes, hitches, outs, posts, slants, screens, everything. And that's the other thing is he only had 2 screen targets.
Yeah.
He's not getting the screen targets that all these other guys are getting where they're force feeding this offense to him. He had to go earn that, especially in an offense that like we said, Jalen Milroe was not the entrenched starter until like week 5. They were rotating quarterbacks with Tyler Buckner. Yeah, I know. That's the face you should make too.
Let's go a step further though, Ev. I see people commenting. Mike S., you said nothing on the field is a knock on Burton. And again, you guys know, State of the Jungle, the vibe might have changed, the studio might have changed, but we still include you guys in the conversation. It says nothing on the field is a knock on Burton. His outside of his maturity, don't want to draft him and have him slam his sports car into people and take off something stupid that comes with immaturity. Well, let me be real with you. We've never had an issue off the field with Jermaine Burton. You had the one incident when he was walking off the field, and I believe I don't like when college you treat these college athletes like they're professionals, right?
I mean, you see it happen in basketball all the time.
Right.
People storm the court and end up stepping on players.
They end up stepping on players and players up and he should have kept his composure.
100%.
He should have kept his composure. That was a bad moment, and that's a moment where he's highlighted, but it's not like he went out there and he had an off the field issue. But also, let's talk about his immaturity. I'm gonna go a step further. Cincinnati, this is for you. You had Chad Ochocinco as a wide receiver for the Cincinnati Bengals. Let me say that again. You had Chad Ochocinco as a wide receiver for the Cincinnati Bengals. The man who literally hit a cell phone in a goalpost, called it, put on a jacket that said Hall of Famer, proposed to a cheerleader on the sideline, used to literally call his coaches and say, hey, coach, how you going to stop 85? Get me involved in the game plan. And you're concerned about a player being passionate on the football
field? Channeling it the right way, right?
Yeah.
Which is part of maturing, right? That's part of the development process as much as trying to improve how he runs routes, right?
I just think that when it comes to the people trying to knock this guy, or you're reading the tea leaves, that's why you listen to State of the Jungle. I wish State of the Jungle could talk about everybody's team, but guess what? You guys are blessed enough to see us talk about the Cincinnati Bengals, right? So the simple fact that I'm trying to make is we're going to destroy narratives that you hear out there. It's like when people say the Cincinnati Bengals, like, well, I forgot earlier this year, they said, oh, the Bengals don't pay their quarterbacks. I think Shannon Sharp said that. We're always going to look to destroy the BS that you hear on a regular basis. We're going to tell you guys the truth. This is coming from 2 Alabama Crimson Tides fans who were not high on J.C. Latham, who were not high on other Alabama players. We can tell you Jermaine Burton was a difference maker on the football field. There is no bias in my rap. I didn't want the Bengals to draft any other Alabama player outside of that guy. Terry Arnold.
Like, that's it.
But because that guy is a difference maker.
Right.
So, and people, Mike S., you said Chad was marketing. He was calculated. Don't want impulsive behavior. When Saban calls you immature, it's not good. You got to realize this is the same Nick Saban, though, that just retired because he was already fed up with the way college, because Nick Saban in that same breath talked about how great of a player Jermaine Burton truly is. And there were people that said if you didn't have those concerns, the Bengals might have gotten themselves a first-round talent. So again, I'm sorry to be long-winded. Daniel and Logan, I apologize. Because I know I've been let you guys talk, but we've got to talk about this because I've seen so many people try to destroy and make up their own narratives when it's regarding this kid. And when I tell you this guy is truly a difference maker, you guys are going to see it. And I'm not saying, I'm not going to even be like, I told you so or anything like that. I'm just saying Cincinnati as a collective, be excited. Enjoy the show because the Bengals just drafted a phenomenal player in Jermaine Burton that's going to make a difference maker, and it's going to take the sting away if and when T. Higgins finally moves on to his next team, Daniel.
Yeah, I mean, not much else to add, to be honest.
We said a lot.
The main thing I'll definitely add is, guys, for all the concerns about Jermaine Burton, at the end of the day, guys, this is a round 3 pick. This isn't a round 1 pick. So for whatever concern that you guys have, whether it's immaturity, at the end of the day, you're not spending a first-round pick on this guy. This was a 3rd-round pick. And my whole thoughts on it is I'm not too concerned. Yes, he's probably a little bit immature, and that's who was it? Like he is obviously, you are on a much bigger stage. You're on NFL team. I'm not so concerned about it when you got Jamar, when you have T. Higgins, when you have the culture like the Bengals do.
Somebody in the comment section, Tyrone Thomas, our good friend, he says, getting up in the face of opponents after catches, yes, that's concerning. Do me a favor. Go turn on the Bengals versus the Tennessee Titans when in the playoffs. Go watch Jamar Chase after every single catch. Go turn on Jamar Chase versus the Kansas City Chiefs, whichever year you want to. Watch him after every single catch. You mean to tell me the flexing in the players' face? Like, what are we talking about here? What are we talking about here? Come on now.
God.
Continue, Daniel.
Yeah, no, you're good. I'm with you. And like it's football at the end of the day. For me,
Yeah.
when I'm watching cornerbacks and when I'm watching wide receivers personally, I want that. I want that in a quarterback and I want that in wide receiver. The final point I'll make, something that stood out to me when I was watching the film, and this goes back to the numbers Evan was kind of talking about, is the yards after the catch. My favorite plays of his were outbreaking routes to the sideline. I'm sorry, if it's an outbreaking route to the sideline, you're not going to get a lot of yards after the catch. But the dude was putting two feet down. The dude was making great catches. He was 50-50 balls over a lot of these cornerbacks. I'm not too worried that the fact that he didn't have a 1,000-yard season like Troy Franklin.
No.
I think he's much more likely to have a 1,000-yard season in the NFL than he
agree.
did at college. So Jermaine Burton, let me just say this: the expectations, I think he slides in right away and is the number 3 wide receiver for the Cincinnati Bengals. And I don't think you have a concern about Jermaine Burton when he's on the field. So
based on the yards per target too, if he got 83 targets, then he would have easily been where Troy Franklin was.
Where some of those top guys were.
And final thing I'll say is, at the end of the day, guys, this isn't a normal situation. You have Joe Burrow, you have Jamar Chase, and T. Higgins. A lot of these wide receivers would have success, and now you get a guy like Jermaine Burton who's taken the back seat in college before. I think he's a perfect guy. He doesn't need to get 10 targets a game. I love the pick. And at the end of the day, it is a round 3 pick.
But he's not your typical round 3
Not
player.
at all. Not at all.
You know, this one, I don't really stand on too many hills, but I'm very confident this one's going to pan out.
1,000%.
Yeah. I think my favorite thing just about Burton in general is just, Daniel alluded to it a little bit, just the fit, both now and in the future. You know, everybody knows more than likely how this T. Higgins situation is going to play out. And a guy like Burton allows you to ease the pain a little bit. Obviously, it's unknown, but there's so much to like about his game. But when you look at it also right now, yes, he's not just a slot guy. He can play inside and outside, but he allows you to move a guy like Jamar Chase inside and outside a little bit. He allows you to give everybody more looks. And when he is in the inside, in the slot, again, he's not a slot receiver. But when he played in the slot last year, he was pretty damn good. 28 yards per catch out of the slot last year is awesome.
Yeah,
like he just produces wherever he's lined up. And you know, maybe he is going to be developed into an amazing slot receiver with that elite explosive production that I just mentioned. But you know what? If not, you can still move Jamar Chase inside. It just gives you so much more flexibility of offense. It allows you to show more looks. It allows you to run more plays. It just gives you more freedom, more creativity, and an offense both now and in the future.
And one final thing, guys, is all these other wide receivers, in my opinion, they all have question marks about their fit on the football field. You talk about guys who I love, you know, looking at what is the alternative. Jalen McMillan. The question for me is he going to be big enough to win 50-50 balls? Is he going to be able to win on the outside? Troy Franklin, the same thing. Most of his yards, yes, he had 1,300 yards, but the dude, most of the time, it was an 80-yard streak.
A lot of these guys have more defined roles or limited skill sets or limited route trees. This is a guy with a complete profile that, he's 22. Yes, if you're just looking on field and you say, well, the breakout age isn't there. And I'm usually someone who looks at that. But again, you're talking about Georgia, and then you go to Alabama and you end up playing this power run, deep shot, because they go, oh, Milroe, all he can do to just put the training wheels on is we're going to do the power run Jalen Hurts offense and take deep shots with Jermaine Burton because he throws a pretty deep ball, and we can let Jermaine Burton get separation and run under it. I mean, his ability to get cornerbacks and safeties to flip their hips, declare their leverage, and then attack blind spots and make them pay for doing so is just, there's so much there that you just can really appreciate.
I think some people might use this, phrase as a cop out sometimes to defend sort of bad picks, but I think Jermaine Burton is truly going to be a better pro than he was a college football player. And it's just, there's so many things about it. His ability to run these routes just fits better in the NFL than it did at Alabama. Like Evan alluded to all the routes he runs and the percentages of them. That's the stuff he's going to do in the NFL. Those are the players he can do. He can play to his strengths as a player instead of having to play, I don't want to say down to his quarterback, but he has a quarterback that can make
limits.
He now has a quarterback that can make any throw in the game. So now when Jermaine Burton can run everything and know he's going to get an on target ball, it opens up so many more things for him. And there's such a clear path to being such a better pro than he was a college player.
It-
And he was a damn good college player.
was.
So
And-
let's not act like he wasn't.
And the one thing I'll keep talking about, man, that I like about this pick was I think that the Bengals started it last year, but you had a lot of guys who resembled each other in the wide receiver room, right? Whether it be Trent Irwin, very resemblance of a Tyler Boyd or Charlie Jones, right? And I think you bring in Charlie Jones. I think he's better than what people may think, and I think he's going to show a lot of things. Yoshi Voss brings something different, but I think that you now have another dynamic wide receiver that can just offer up something completely different from some other people that you have in the wide receiver room.
Yeah.
Man, you got to be excited about it. But let's keep it going.
Mhm.
You can tell we're pretty. Yeah, man. If you can tell, we're pretty fired up about the Jermaine Burton pick. But let's go with the Bengals drafting of the nose tackle, McKinley Jackson. I'm going to start with Logan over here because me and Evan we kind of took over that last
we
segment,
went for a long one on that
yeah.
one. Yeah.
Man, McKinley Jackson's just the one pick that I think everybody kind of keeps coming back to, and it leaves you questioning a lot of things. It leaves you thinking. I think everybody kind of assumed we would try to maybe double dip in the defensive lineman room, address more of a pure nose tackle like McKinley Jackson kind of projects to be. But the third round is just a little rich, man. Like, I mean, there's obviously everybody grades differently. Everybody has different opinions on players, but there's people that had this guy as a barely draftable player. Obviously that could be a bit harsh. I think he's probably more of a 6th, 5th round guy, but at the end of the day, he's a nose tackle, and the history of drafting nose tackles just in the middle rounds is not very good. Like, there wasn't even that many nose tackles drafted after him. I mean,
Right.
Wingo was drafted after him, and maybe somebody else.
Jefferson, I think, was the only other one.
Yeah, like, and those players are probably better than McKinley Jackson. The highest paid people in UDFA were nose tackles because that's where you can typically find good nose tackles. There's still some things to like with McKinley Jackson. 4 sacks last year as a nose tackle is good, but the thing with him is just consistency. There's some flashes of really good football when you turn on the tape, but it just doesn't happen as frequently as you'd want it. Again, maybe it's A&M, maybe it's just him. DeMarvin Leal was kind of similar last year. A lot of people had him super hyped up early in the process, and he fell and he fell and he fell. I think the same thing kind of happened with McKinley Jackson in this cycle. Obviously, they're a little bit different players, but there's just limited pass rushing juice. There's an average run defender. There's poor athletic testing. There's just so many things that are pointing towards it being a pretty bad pick. But the positive for McKinley Jackson is he's probably going to walk into a situation where he's going to play early in his career. So whatever these issues are, whatever these questions are that we have of him, he's going to have an opportunity to shut at least me up. I don't know how you guys are going to feel about them, but pretty early on in his career. And obviously we're all rooting for him, but there's just, we need to see it. We need to see it more. We need to see it. And we better hope we see it.
I'm going to send him the segment.
Sweet.
I saw him already arguing with people on Facebook. So I'm excited to be
off
here.
Facebook,
Everybody
man.
stay
Get
off
off
Facebook. Yeah, no one belongs on Facebook.
Yeah, man. Danny, what were your thoughts on the McKinley Jackson pick?
Yeah, I mean, just to add in my 2 cents, McKinley Jackson, the positives is when I saw him, he's got quick hands, and I think there is definitely upside for him. First off, the dude is huge, right? He's massive, but he's got quick hands, and that's why I truly see the upside is, hey, even though he's a nose tackle, even though he's meant to be more of the big body run stopping guy, the best parts I saw him, he truly quick hands. I think he's got some nice pass rush moves. I loved his ability. I mean, dude was strong as hell.
Yeah.
Where I do have concerns is truly not really just as a player. I think he's a fine prospect as of right now. It's really just who the Bengals had on the board as well.
Yeah.
And this is where, for me personally, like, it may, like, you got Kyrie Jackson in the corner. I even think a lot of these other guys, for me, the interior offensive line is where I would have totally went with this pick. And that's where right after the Bengals picked McKinley Jackson, where we saw that run, Mason McCormack, we saw Tanner Bortolini.
Yeah.
That's what truly is killing me. How I view the draft personally is, hey, what is the alternative? And I think interior offensive line, the depth that you had right here was way more pressing than taking McKinley Jackson. So all in all, once again, I think McKinley Jackson steps in. I think he's going to be better than Zachary Carter.
Yeah, which is useful, which makes it better.
And I think he adds to the depth, which is a positive. I think he's got the upside as a pass rusher as well. So I hope, once again, he shuts me up. And it's not like I'm saying he's terrible player. It's just my grade for him is lower because of the other guys
who
that
you
were all on the
passed on.
board.
Yeah,
Yes.
I will say too with McKinley in general, like, if everybody like evaluates and scouts differently, but if you were to really just look at his highlights, there's some dominant flashes in his game, which, at the very least is good to see. So it's not like you're taking a total shot in the dark on so many negatives, but he shoots the gap well. He does some things very well. You just want to see that more consistently. Maybe Marion Hobby can kind of get that out of him, but there's a little bit there's just so much more to be desired there.
Yeah.
He obviously could continue to build off those flashes of dominance that he showed in college, or maybe it's just playing in that limited role, whatever it is. There's things to like, but there's just also so many things not to like, and we just got to hope he puts it all together and comes in and contributes right away.
Yeah, I think that's the tough part, right? Is this kind of brings into the play the positional value thing,
Yep.
right?
Yeah.
Where you're like, hey, this is a nose tackle, and not even just that. I think people have done a good job kind of illustrating that there's been inconsistency with that, even though he has been kind of that penetrating guy instead of a holding the point of attack guy.
Yeah.
The pass rush production there's upside there, but you didn't see it consistently. And I think the one sack he did end up getting was actually just like a high motor play where the guy just kind of held the ball for 5+ seconds. So that's kind of one side. Yes, there's more to work with. Yes, that's kind of the slippery nature he has is unique for a guy his size, but inconsistency even against the run, against double teams, getting pushed off your spot, inconsistent technique. And that's not what you want to see out of your nose tackle. And then the other part of it is, again, how much better is McKinley Jackson 4-5 rounds better than some of the free agent nose tackles or 7th round nose tackles that were going right? So again, it's opportunity cost. What could you have taken there? You could have taken guys that can compete for starting corner, starting interior offensive line to upgrade on Cordell Volson, or at least be a backup that's better than Cody Ford or Jackson Carman, who no one wants to see on the field, especially going into the playoffs if one of the guys ends up on the interior offensive line getting hurt, right? Or Trey Hill at starter. Wouldn't you much rather see any of these guys? And this is going to be something I talk about multiple times throughout the day 3 picks for the Bengals, but it's just like, man, you had Mason McCormick, Tanner Bortolini, Trevor Keegan, Quantez Stiggers, Audric Estime, Christian Mahogany, Jared Gibson, Bo Limmer, guys with guard center versatility, or guys who could have given you actual tangible production. The best nose tackle in the NFL is probably Dexter Lawrence, right? And he played 285 snaps at nose.
Yep.
If you're talking about you're going to rotate a guy in for 200 snaps and you took him in the 3rd round, and that's the high point, right? That's what you get out of him. That's not a good investment. You can't tell me that he was 4 rounds better than any nose tackle you could have taken a preference on. I think this is a case of feeling the fire of, oh, we really need to fill this nose tackle position, and also maybe falling in love with the guy a little bit and taking him. This is for me, the Drew Sample, the Jackson Carman pick of this draft, where everyone has him
He's cooking.
round 5, round 6.
Yeah.
But you guys take him 2-3 rounds early because you think he feels a need for you and you feel confident that he's going to be competent. But that's not what you should be shooting for. You shouldn't be aiming so low in the 3rd round when you could get these guys who can start or play 500+ snaps at important positions for you that can help you right now. I think you could have supplemented the nose tackle with any of the older free agents, like a John Jenkins out there right now, where you sign him, or a Carlos Watkins or someone like that, and say, hey, we'll rotate you in for 100 some odd nose tackle snaps. We'll rotate BJ Hill and Chris Jenkins and Sheldon Rankins in there a little bit too. So nobody's playing too much of it, but we think we can supplement that and get better players that can actually start or play rotational snaps for you and get a much better quality prospect than you had to do in other positions later in the draft.
I will say, just to continue to, shine some more positive light on him. Since 2022, he's had 34 run stops, which is the 3rd most of any SEC defensive tackle. And 14 of those went for no gain or loss, which is 5th in that time period too. So again, it's all like you're banking on those flashes. You're banking on the few flashes that you've seen from him. And again, they are very high flashes. They are very dominant flashes, but it's just the consistency, the massive lack of consistency mixed with the other players that were on the board. There's some things I like about McKinley Jackson, but at the end of the day, we just have to see more.
I agree. You boys cooked on this one. There's not too much I could really add on in terms of the McKinley Jackson pick. I hope it pans out, man. I hope that he shocks us all and he really steps up to the plate. And I don't know if he's necessarily that true nose tackle, if you will, that people are pegging him to be, but we'll see what happens. Let's go on to the next pick, though, guys. I'm gonna just tell you guys this before I even, pass this over to Daniel. Daniel loved this pick,
Mm.
but I'll tell you, a lot like Kendrick Lamar's diss track to Drake, wasn't a needle mover for me. Wasn't a needle mover for me, and that's the Bengals selection of tight end Eric All. I'll have my reasons as to why that wasn't a needle mover for me, but again, I'm gonna reiterate it again. A lot like Kendrick Lamar's diss to Drake, it was not a needle mover. Daniel.
Yeah, I'm a fan of it. I'm a huge fan of it. Listen, yes, there were other guys you could have gotten. This is the same exact thing. The interior offensive line for me is where I really could have made some other question marks. Hey, maybe you go into your offensive line, but we talk about what running back is another position. Sure, yeah, Bucky Irving was there, but how I view Eric All, and this is we'll talk about Tanner. We'll talk about Tanner in a second, but I think both of these tight ends, specifically Eric All, when he was on the field, he was an absolute stud. I think he's got true starting potential at the NFL level when he's healthy. The only question mark is his health, right? And I think this is the best possible situation for him because he doesn't have to step in day one and be a starter. He doesn't have to step in even year two and be a true number one tight end, but you're betting on him for the potential. The dude is extremely fresh. I mean, he didn't play a ton of snaps, and when he was on the field, not just at Iowa, but also at Michigan, he put on great tape. And for me, I think he's extremely versatile. He can play in the slot. He's got great wiggle at the top of his routes. And I really think he can do it all. So he's a guy that I saw. He won many 50-50 balls. And maybe his straight line speed, okay, it maybe dipped down a little bit after his surgery. Maybe he wasn't, super fast at Iowa. But listen, what I saw out of him is he beat safeties 1-on-1. He beat slot corners 1-on-1. He beat linebackers 1-on-1. You put him in the middle of the field and you give him an option route to go out or in. I think he'll beat that linebacker every single time. So we've got to see his health, but he's got the size, 6'5". I'm a fan of him. And yes, it's a 4th round pick. You could say there's some other guys, but for me, this is a day 3 pick. He's got the potential to be a number 1 tight end on an NFL team, and I think it's worth the pick.
Yeah, I think with Eric All in general, I think when he is all said and done, healthy, he's a pretty stereotypical tight end. He's solid in the run blocking game. He's probably a slightly above average pass catcher. He can create separation at the tight end position, and I think that's more of his calling card. But again, the injury history is a concern, but when you look at the thing, a 16% drop rate is really, 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 really bad. It's like we just talked about Jermaine Burton not having any drops. A 16% drop rate for a tight end when you aren't targeted all that often is pretty bad. Only a 33% contested catch rate, again, for a tight end. That's not very good either. You're usually going to your tight ends when, I'm gonna have you pretty much go up and make a play or turn around and box this guy out. And that's not really the strength of his game. He's a guy that really is a pretty refined route runner for being at the size that he is at the tight end position. He's more of your, like I said, he's your stereotypical inline tight end that can do a little bit of everything. He's going to be a good to average run blocker, a good to average receiver. He's a high floor guy, like in terms of his ceiling. Like it's not the highest ceiling in the world, but there's a lot to like about his game. I don't think he's really truly going to suck or be a bust in the NFL level. He'll be a contributor for a long time if things click. Again, he's going to be a 3-down tight end, be above average at everything, not special in anything. He's the type of tight end that gets underappreciated, but kind of always comes in and does the dirty work for you. Just a solid player, man. Just solid.
And one last thing, the only thing that I would say that probably would knock him down is the fact that the other tight ends were on the board. Let me just say this. I think Jared Wiley for the Kansas City Chiefs is going to be an absolute stud. He's a guy where I rewatched his film. I think he is going to dominate with the Chiefs. And the same thing, you took Tanner, 2 rounds later. I think the value between a Tanner and Eric All isn't that big of a difference. So you could definitely call it a reach. And that's where I would totally be okay with that. But him as a player, I think he's a fine day 3 pick.
So this is kind of a point where I'm going to talk a lot about the Bengals strategy here. From here on out, this is kind of where I really like the players they picked. I don't like the pick strategy. And I'll go more into that. But just to say, again, good things about Eric All as a prospect, because I want to make sure you guys know I don't hate All. This is not about All, right? Tight end size, 6'4" and 3/4 and 3/8, 252. So bigger size than a lot of these guys like Jatavian Sanders, Cade Stover, Ben Sinnott. All these guys were a little bit undersized compared to him. Second out of 54 tight ends in yards per route run. So when he was on the field, he was productive in that nature. 96th percentile in his yards per route run, 93rd percentile in receiving grade versus single coverage, and 72nd percentile in separation versus single coverage, which is a great mark for a tight end. Okay. Now that I've said the nice things, it's a little bit of the cold water, right? If you were concerned about Amarius Mims playing 800 snaps in his career at 21 years old with 1 year really starting, we got to talk about the fact that Eric All has played 1,000 snaps in 5 seasons.
Yeah.
Okay. That's the difference, right? On top of that, I get really nervous about anyone who has spine or back injuries or neck injuries. Those are just generally they rear their head, and that just might mean he's not a second contract player and he comes in and he cooks on his rookie contract, and then the body breaks down a little bit sooner, or the injury risk is a little bit higher. I like the upside swing. Now, here's the problem I have with the pick, the strategy behind it, right? You took him, by all accounts, probably around early. Okay. So when I look at what you did in the offseason, you signed 3 tight ends to a contract, right? This offseason. Every single one of them got a new contract this offseason. And I know Tanner Hudson's is not that big, right? But you can't say, oh, we were surprised they were on the board when you took him around early, and then you took McLaughlin about where he was supposed to be, right? So you can't tell me, oh, we were just surprised by the value and we went best player available. So if your plan going in was we want to double dip on some of these high upside tight ends, why is a team that is already cash strapped going out and spending these money on these tight ends? And as opposed to waiting until, was someone going to sign Tanner Hudson out from under you, the 29 turning 30-year-old Tanner Hudson?
So what if it
Did you have to wait on that? So like, that's the thing. I'm like, I'm looking at so many offensive linemen that could have either pushed Volson to start or could have been your immediate backup center, backup guard for any of these guys. And again, guys, you don't stay healthy at all 5 O-line spots 2 years in a row. It just does not happen.
Also, Tanner Hudson's you re-signed with the Bengals back already.
And so all of that is like, hey, you guys are spending a lot of these picks while you have guys like Christian Mahogany, like Quantez Stiggers, like Jarrett Kingston, like Bo Limmer, like Trevor King, and all these guys who have this guard center versatility that can push for starting time right now or be your interior O-line 3, and you are addressing tight end 4, tight end 5, corner 7, safety 6 on the roster, right? And that's when I'm like, I don't understand the logic here when, again, I know some of these guys went a little bit later, but you reached by 3 rounds on McKinley Jackson, if you're being nice about it. You reached a round on Eric All, which again, I like Eric All. I like the upside swing. It's not about Eric. It's about the fact that you are addressing 5, 6, and 7 at multiple spots when you need an upgrade, possibly at just starting guard or any of your backup center 2, interior O-line 2 or 3 for your backup spot. And you're worried about 6, 7, and 8 for guys who might not make the roster. And now you're like, oh, well, now we have to put Drew Sample at H-back on the roster if we want to keep him. Or, well, there goes Tanner Hudson. He's off the roster, which, again, I'm not losing any sleep over it. But, again, just from a team-building perspective, there were still guys who could be starters or immediate backups for you, and you're taking guys who are 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th on the depth chart with these day 3 picks. And again, I know they're day 3 picks. I like the players objectively, but again, just from a team building standpoint, I just don't understand how they valued best player available versus our needs versus expectation, right? Because if you walk into an auction and you spend, someone says starting bid is $20,000 and you say $100,000, they're going, all right, well, sold to the guy who doesn't really get auctions, right? Like you do have to take into mind, yes, you want to get it, but if you do that every draft pick, you lose out on $1 million worth of value, and you overpaid for all these guys who are, again, might be contributors, but you can still get McKinley Jackson in the 5th or 6th round. It's not like you're losing out on him, but you are losing out on starting talent in the 3rd and 4th rounds that you could have. And that is my issue with their overall strategy on day 3.
Yeah. I mean, Evan, you cooked there.
It's been bothering me for a couple of days.
I definitely think that there were, with every draft, you're going to have some reaches, you're going to have some picks you disagree with. I disagree a little bit with the with the reach on McKinley Jackson, because I do believe it was a reach. I do. I mean that when I say Eric All didn't move the needle for me, and I want to address the issue further. I think it is such a lazy comparison to say, compare him to George Kittle, like I saw some people doing.
Yeah.
I did not understand that at all.
I want to point out, I know some people are like, he's fully recovered now. Yeah, from the ACL, and yes, he had surgery, but your spine is structurally fused now. That is inherently weaker than not having a structurally fused spine. So like that is always going to be an issue. It's a reason why, who was the wide receiver from Clemson who had the neck injury?
Justin Ross.
Justin Ross. There's a reason it took years before he was able to confidently be on the field and do that stuff. And even now they play him sparingly, not just because of the talent, but because that is just a scary prospect.
Yeah, man, it's one of those weird situations where, like I said, I agree with you with both your sentiments. I definitely feel like that last pick in the third round, McKinley Jackson and Eric All were a little bit of a thug, especially when
I don't have a problem with Eric All. I'm just saying
you don't have an issue with the pick necessarily. Like, I mean, at that
point, I have an issue with the pick. That's the difference.
You have an issue with the when he was picked, if you will, right? And I think you're well within your right to say that. I just don't think that, hey, it's let's compare him to George Kittle because like they went to the same school in Iowa, which produces.
Or if you just don't take Tanner, like if you take one or the other, I'm cool with both of these guys as prospects. But again, you're talking about the 5th tight end on your roster now,
and you still expect anybody that you spend a draft pick on, you're expecting something of to some level, right? I don't want to just say, oh well, that's why he's a day 3 pick. No, that's a ridiculous take to have. I think that there could have been definitely more options at a later date to potentially take him at a different pick, especially when you look at Tanner McLaughlin. I think that's a guy that we definitely should talk more about later. But let's get to the next Bengals pick that they made. Let's talk about Josh Newton again. I was going to start this off with a little joke. I hate the way that you cover. I hate the way I'm joking, but I'm not seeing it with this pick. I'll never question Lou when it comes to drafting defensive backs because this guy has been able to turn water into wine when it comes to, reviving some guys' career. But I'm really curious to hear what Evan's thoughts were on the drafting of Josh Newton and where you see him fitting.
Yeah, I mean, the age and the athleticism are concerning. We know the up and down nature of cornerback play and just kind of secondary play in general, especially when it comes to ball production. It's really hard to be consistent year over year with that. So I don't want to knock him so much for not being as productive in 23 as he was in 22. But again, when you're talking about you're already a little bit smaller, you're a limited athlete, you're already an older prospect, like the ceiling for him is probably rotational boundary corner. And again, I don't hate the player objectively. I personally would have gone different ways, like maybe a Cam Hart pick, just taking a chance on those athletic measurables, the size, the speed, all of that. But again, I don't have a problem with Josh Newton. I'm glad that they addressed corner.
Can I ask you a question?
I think Stiggers is a guy who could have given them more potential upside at that and had more ball production and has more upside because of his lack of experience compared to, I feel like you're probably getting close to tapped out with what Newton is, and you feel like he is going to be what he is going to be, but I don't think he's pushing DJ Turner or Cam Taylor-Britt out of a starting job, as some people seem to think, anytime soon.
Right. I actually wanted to talk with you more about this. We haven't got a chance to talk offline. Kyrie Jackson, why do you think he fell?
That's a good question. I think it was mostly age. You remember I was talking about Elijah Jones, and I saw Kyrie Jackson in a similar light, where you have a guy who's got size, length, explosion, but is 24 years old, has had good ball production. So again, that's a guy who I was like, I don't know why he's falling. And then Elijah Jones, instead of going in the 5th or the 6th round, I think the Cardinals picked him in like the back end of the 3rd or the middle of the 4th. And so I think it's the same thing with Kyrie, where maybe you say, looking at the age he produced at, looking at what age he is now, maybe he is as good as he's going to be. But again, when you take a chance on a prospect like Kyrie as opposed to Newton, you have 4-5 inches taller, much longer arms, much better athletic measurables. Those are the guys you take chances on in these middle rounds because they have the best chance of producing, which again, like it's not to say that these mid-round guys who aren't, 9.8 athletic scores aren't going to be able to be successful or have a role or be valuable in special teams or rotational duties. But at the same time, like the upside is capped with these guys who are limited athletes and small. We always say if you're going to be small school or small stature, you got to test like a crazy good athlete and you got to produce. And it's you just there's not enough in the profile, which again is why he went in the 5th. There's a hope that maybe he reclaims a little bit of that 22 status. But again, I think once you get in the NFL and you're getting tested with the limited length and the limited athleticism that the ceiling really is just kind of backup boundary corner.
You know who I had to turn on the tape of, man, when I was watching Josh Newton?
Who's that?
This is a blast from the past. Kavari Russell.
Oh,
I had
wow.
to turn on Kavari Russell, man. I said, man, couldn't unsee it for a second there. But Danny, what were your thoughts on the Josh Newton pick?
Yeah, I'm of the same belief. I think when I look at this is once again how I view it. There were better cornerbacks earlier in the draft. I feel like could have contributed more. I think Josh Newton is a fine pick. Once again, I think he's a solid all-around pick. And once again, I'm sure Lou has a plan for him. He was, captain. He was, he can do it all. He played mostly on the outside, but when I watched him, he was fine. He was good. He was great cover skills. I mean, decent, good tackler. I think he's a solid pick. I don't think like there were other guys I definitely liked on the board.
Tell us how you really feel.
Yeah, I mean,
You can tell he's being like,
He's being a little nice. He's a solid pick.
No, how I feel, Malik, is at the end of the day, most of these draft classes, you take 10 guys, 4 of those guys are going to be somewhat even close to seeing a starting snap. I don't think Josh Newton will ever be a starter. And I think he's fine. I think he's okay. It's a 5th round pick. I don't think this isn't one of the picks where I can point and say, okay, this dude has starting potential to be, a steal in the draft. I don't see that. I see he's fine. And this is my concern is when a guy looks just solid at the college level, how do they look at the NFL level? Most of the time it's rough. So Josh Newton, I think he's fine, and this is one of the picks. I think
maybe it's a potential pick.
I think so. I think it's a potential pick.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, your cornerback room isn't terrible. I guess you got Dax Hill now, but it's a depth piece, and we'll see what he does in training camp. So
Logan, what were your thoughts?
I think. I think I'm one of the few people that actually kind of likes the Josh Newton pick. I think, when you got to look at all aspects of the player. And, when you look at Newton, he came into college as a receiver. He was recruited as a receiver. He gets to campus and they're like, hey, dude, you're not a very good receiver. You ever thought about playing corner? He's like, sure, I want to play football at the next level. Let's go try out this cornerback thing. He has some success, transfers to TCU, and had a very good 2022. Obviously, the inconsistencies in 2023 are certainly something to be concerned about. But when, if you're drafting Josh Newton and you're expecting him to come out and be your starting corner, obviously there are some issues in that realm.
Right.
But when you look at his fit with the Cincinnati Bengals, I think, things kind of get a little more clear. You have DJ Turner and you have Cam Taylor, 2 elite world-class athletes. What does Josh Newton do? He's a physical, he's a hitter, he's a run defender, he's a press man corner. That's what he's going to do at the next level. His man coverage grade is an 80. His zone coverage grade is a 50. That's a drastic difference. So when you can play a guy like that to your strengths of his physicality and just playing press man the whole time or just playing man coverage, when you can have a player like that that is borderline almost elite in one area, you can find ways to get them on the field. Again, it's not going to be in a starter role.
Yeah.
Because when you're that bad at zone coverage, you obviously can be picked on so much. But there are some things to like with Josh Newton. And if you really want to get, even more into it a little bit, he also has 300 snaps in the box as a safety as well. And that kind of plays into that hard-hitting, physical style of corner. Again, I don't think he's some steal that he's going to be some great multi-year starter in the NFL, but I think he can be kind of a specialist in the league where you're going against some of these bigger body receivers, that happen in the league. The Bengals don't really have a guy that profiles to be able to guard that. Maybe that's what Dax Hill is about to be. Maybe Newton's going to come in and be that tight end kind of guy that's going to come in and just man up the tight ends at the line of scrimmage. I think he's a specialist. There's things he does really well, and there's some things he's just borderline can't do and should never be asked to do. But at the end of the day, if you have some above average traits, you could probably find a role somehow in the NFL if your defensive coordinator is willing to kind of move things around like Lou has shown he's able to do.
Logan, on that note, man, the only athletic benchmarks that he really cleared, like 50th percentile, were the 20-yard shuttle and then the broad jump. Do you think, especially with that kind of physical nature, that safety nature that you talked about, that he might be better suited to kind of a slot role in the future and maybe could help fill that in? Because I again, man, when you're below 25th percentile in height and weight and your arm length is short, and again, your best thing is short area quickness. I know he's got that dog in him, guys, but like, unfortunately, like that doesn't account for a whole lot. Yes, you can. It does when you just put your face in the run game and everything, but like, it can only make up for so much that ability can't, right?
Yeah.
Where unfortunately your ability to play the game does matter, no matter how bad I want to be 5'11" or 6'2" or whatever. As aggressive in dog mentality as I have, it's never going to be able to make up for that when I'm guarding anybody who's taller than me, right, or faster than me.
I wonder, does this pick signify? Can he potentially replace? What's his name? The Bengals backup slot, Jordan Davis.
Jordan Davis, absolutely.
I
and that's the
wonder.
thing. If he has that versatility,
Jalen Davis, yeah.
Again, it's. If you can be the backup boundary corner and give you 500 snaps and fill in even for Mike Hilton, who's getting older, and maybe kind of, like you said, take that role from him and show that he can handle that, like, absolutely he could outperform his value. I'm not trying to discount the player at all. I'm just trying to, again, I know we're talking about 5th round picks, guys, but we're not here to just talk about, here's the 99th percentile outcome, here's the best case scenario. Right. Isn't this so great? We're here to tell it to you like it is. We're here to tell you the good, the bad, the ugly, and what we think you can realistically expect. Right. And I don't think, like I said, he's going to be pushing DJ Turner or Cam Taylor-Britt or Mike Hilton or Von Bell off the field anytime soon. But he can definitely back those positions up at a decent level, and that's really what they need.
Yeah, and I think he, he kind of could profile as that slot guy. Not too many slot snaps there in college, but again, I just think he's a guy that provides something different that's not really in that cornerback room. It's just that press man physical corner. Maybe he's just subbed in the red zone packages where they really just want to press you off the line of scrimmage, get to the quarterback, or whatever it may be. Or maybe he's just going to be, hey, we're about to go play Mike Evans. I don't know, these big body receivers. Go give me 10 snaps here, so I can let DJ Turner, who's busy flying around the field, who just happens to be a foot shorter than Mike Evans, just play into the matchups a little bit there. He is a press man corner. Don't really expect him to do anything else that's not playing to his strengths. Maybe he could develop into a slot corner, just that blitzer, just that physical guy, but he's just a physical corner, and you can find ways to live with that when you have the success that he's had in man coverage in his career.
I'm kind of laughing a little bit because this us going through the draft picks is kind of it's kind of falling right in line with how our war rooms went. Yeah. The later we get, the more in depth we get.
Gotta
get
on guys.
Oh man. I don't know if we have to, but we are. Let's talk about Tanner McLaughlin really quickly. Let's make this a little quicker. Tanner McLaughlin, Bengals drafted him with the 194th overall pick. This is a guy that I personally could see division with. I think that you could really see some upside there. And, you look at it, he's a willing blocker. He's a guy that he pretty much does everything that's asked of him. He showed some real upside at the college level. Was very productive at Arizona. Yep. And, if you're looking for a guy, like, again, these tight ends, a lot of the tight ends, when people talk about some of the premier tight ends in the National Football League, they get drafted a little bit later. Now, obviously, this is really late in the 6th round, but I still think Tanner McLaughlin can be productive. He is coming in as an older, rookie, if you will. But I still think that this is a guy that has a lot of upside, and especially learning from a guy like Mike Gesicki to get more in and out of his breaks as a route runner. I think that's something that could be very, very beneficial for him. But I'm really, really excited about the pick. Obviously, there were some interior offensive line the Bengals could have went with, but they did not. They chose to go with Tanner McLaughlin. So I believe that they really see something with him. And I do wonder, will Tanner McLaughlin push Tanner Hudson out of the depth chart, if you will. Danny, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, and make this short. He's giving you prototypical size. I mean, 6'5".
Love it.
And when I want a tight end, I want a couple things. First off, you got to have great hands. He has very sure hands.
0 drops.
Yep, zero. Just him and Jermaine Burton. That's not 2 prospects who drafted who did not drop the ball last year.
And in round 6, that's what I want to cover my ass with. Yep. I want a dude who can just have great hands. and he's solid after the catch, and he was extremely productive at college. So for me, you're giving me a guy, yes, he's 25 years old. Maybe he doesn't have that extra ceiling into, being a top 20 tight end, top 10 tight end. With Joe Burrow and this offense, you don't need that.
Nope.
You don't. We saw what Tanner Hudson did, and Tanner Hudson is okay. He's average. And if you're giving me Tanner McLaughlin, I think he gives you the upside of, hey, he's giving you the size, and I think he's a plug and play. If you play him right now, I think he'll give you solid reps as a tight end. He can play the slot. I'm confident. I think Tanner McLaughlin, I think we'll see him get some run this year.
Yeah, I think, the only downside here is the age to me. He's one of my favorite tight end prospects, but he's old. He's 25 years old, which, again, for a rookie, that's kind of crazy.
Capital old.
Yeah, that is
if
old.
I'm 28, what are you saying?
Well, you're not in the NFL.
You're not a rookie.
Though. You're not a rookie.
Okay.
You're a seasoned vet.
Making sure.
But with McLaughlin, it's just more so, again, another former wide receiver, and I think sometimes that scares people. Sometimes it's, whatever. He's 6'5".
It's a great thing.
Yeah. And just like Newton, you can use those things to your advantage. And he's better at running routes. He's better at the catch point. He's also 6'5" and runs a 4.6 40, one of the fastest tight ends in the draft. I truly think the age is the only thing that really held him back in the draft. He's got so many fun attributes that you look for. And, I think him learning from Mike Gesicki is truly amazing. It's a perfect comp for him too. There's just so many things to like about the fit with the, the long-term connection with Joe Burrow, from learning from Gesicki, from the way he compliments Eric All. There's just so many things to like about McLaughlin.
I think, and this is going to be crazy, but for a 6th-round pick, I think, knock on wood, Mike Gesicki stays healthy, obviously. If Mike Gesicki goes down, to get the production that we potentially could get out of Tanner McLaughlin, I feel like most people would be extremely surprised. I think he could step in and give you what Tanner Hudson did and then some.
I know there are some Bengal fans that are really excited about the pick. I saw and appreciate you, T. Barton. He's, putting a nod to my age. I appreciate you. Malik is invincible. But I saw somebody saying by the end of the season, Tanner McLaughlin's going to be tight end 1. I was like, what are we doing here? What are we talking about here, man? But Evan, what are your thoughts quickly?
No, I think they covered it, man. Gives you a little bit after the catch too. 11 forced missed tackles. The age is definitely going to be a limiting factor. It's going to be. He is more of a receiver than a blocker, much in the, like he said, the Gesicki mold previously. There's definitely, he's got like good size, but the arm length is still really small, just 31.5-inch arms.
Yes.
Really small for a guy his size. But I don't see that necessarily limiting his role. Like you said, good hands, more of that receiving tight end, definitely fits well with this offense and still has that blocking upside. If you put him on the move to help compensate for the lack of length, the lack of power and blocking, it can help him sustain those a little bit better. But that's, like you said, not that he's not willing as a blocker. So that's something that I like about him. Like you said, older prospect, All definitely has more upside. You feel like McLaughlin is more of that safer floor. You know what you're getting out of him. Again, nothing wrong with the players. I just wish it would have been, one or the other. I understand taking again. And if this was your plan to double dip on tight ends, then you can do without Tanner Hudson. Again, you don't need to go pay $1 million to Tanner Hudson that you might not see anymore because you decided to double dip. Right. You decided to double dip at tight end. And I don't think anyone was going to steal 30-year-old Tanner Hudson off the free agent market. If you just wanted to wait and see, right. Which they've done hopefully at other positions, and we'll see more veterans kind of get calls now. But yeah, again, nothing wrong with the players. I like the players. I like the potential that you get from a late round pick. But again, it's just the strategy here on day 3 was just a little all over the place for me.
We have close to 300 people in the chat. If you guys could do us a huge favor, give this video a like and subscribe to the YouTube channel while you are here. We greatly appreciate you guys for tuning in. Remember, anytime we go live or upload content, it's simulcasted as well on the First Star Media Group YouTube channel. So make sure you subscribe, turn on post notifications so you guys don't miss when we go live or upload content from the First Star Logistics studio. I want to head on over to the Bengals' next pick, and I want to go to the connoisseur and Danielle Almeida, who knows all about this next guy. You see, I'm getting like Evan, man. I know I'm getting like Evan, man. My verbiage, if you will, is improving. But you talked to me about this guy, in Cedric Johnson, defensive end out of Ole Miss. Tell me what you like. Tell me what you love.
Cedric Johnson he's the mold of the Bengals. He's the prototypical size, 6'4", 260 pounds. My favorite part about him is he went up against some pretty damn good competition at Ole Miss. I went back and rewatched his game, specifically against Alabama. He had good reps against the offensive tackles, both J.C. Latham and their other offensive tackle. He held his own, and he's not super flashy, but he's giving you the athletic upside, I truly believe, of, hey, the Bengals, if I were to predict what their thought process is, hey, we've got a mold of a player and we think we can turn you into something, even if it's just a depth piece to give you juice as an edge rusher. But like I said, I love, first off, his effort is one of my favorite things is, he'll work his way upfield, and he's not an edge rusher who'll just sit upfield. He will come double back down. And many times Alabama ran, their power run with Jalen Milroe, and he would work his way upfield, turn right, turn J.C. Latham around, come right back and make the tackle on Milroe. He'd get outside of the numbers. He'd run all the way across to the weak side help. So for me, number one, the dude is a high effort, high motor player. You're getting the athletic upside of, hey, he's in the mold. He's not a smaller defensive end. He's younger. And like I said, he put some good film, and he was pretty productive at college. So for me, it's a solid pick. I do like some of the other edge rushers that were on the board, like Gabriel Murphy. But at the end of the day, when I turned on the film, I was like, okay, this is something I could see him being a solid depth piece at the NFL level. Worst case scenario, he doesn't make the team. Okay, it's a 6th-round pick. But I liked what I saw. Show me tape against a top 10 pick in J.C. Latham. Held it as his own. Did not get bullied. So I'm a fan of it. I think it's a solid pick.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, not to go too much into detail, he is your stereotypical draft and develop young, athletic defensive end. Not a very good run defender, decent pass rusher. Again, 21 years old and almost an elite level athlete. You draft and see if you can make anything out of it.
Yeah, I think that was beautifully said, Logan. You've been shining today. You've been shining today. Ed, what were your thoughts on the Cedric?
We've talked about the low-key need for edge, man. When you've got Joseph Osai and Can Sample both up after this season, you've got Trey Hendrickson and Sam Hubbard obviously aging and also up after next season. So you're looking at losing about 4 edge players plus the Zach Carter snaps that he might sometimes get in that kind of position. So Miles Murphy's not going to be able to hold that load alone. I like taking the upside swing on a guy who tested like a pretty good athlete in terms of linear ability. His side-to-side lateral agility testing was not great. But for a guy who's going to win with power, with length, and kind of has that speed to power profile, I think it's a shot worth taking in these later rounds for sure to help kind of beef up that edge rotation.
I agree with you. I don't think anybody's complaining about adding depth to the pass rush because that's something that we all said the Bengals need to do more of, get more juice in the pass rush. Here's a move that was a little bit interesting, and I don't know if this signifies anything when it comes to the Tyson Anderson front, a guy that we're all high on. We've been all high on every preseason since he's been here, or offseason since he's been here. But John Anthony, safety out of Ole Miss, obviously people kind of gave the nod that, resembles Mike Hilton a little bit. Logan, I know you love your defensive backs. Let's hear from you.
Again, when everybody kind of saw this pick come up on the board, safety, you're like, oh man, what are we doing?
Not me. I said yes. Let's go more safety.
When you really get into the player, there's so much more to like. He just keeps better and better every time I look at him. 400 coverage snaps this last year, only 1 touchdown allowed. First off, that is very impressive. But he's not just a safety. He has over 300 career snaps at outside corner, at slot corner, at deep safety, in the box. He can play all over the football field. And it's not that he's just playing all over the football field and not really doing anything. He has an 18.5 forced incompletion rate, which is good. He has a only 10% missed tackle rate as a safety, which is good. He has some of the more tackles near the line of scrimmage as a safety, which is good. He's coming downhill and jumping on the ball very quickly. 10 forced incompletions, 4th most out of all of college football this year at the safety position. This guy just makes plays. Yes, he's not a great athlete. Yes, he kind of doesn't really have a true home on the football field, but he's a true defensive back and he's a true playmaker no matter where you're going to put him. Yeah, we're going to have to find a way to get him on the field. I think that's the worry. I think he's a good player. The fit is just going to be interesting because, like we said, we have a pretty crowded cornerback room. We have a pretty crowded safety room, but this is a good player. This is a versatile player to throw in the back end of wherever position group you want to put him. He can do a lot of different things for you, and he can do a lot of different things very well.
Dana?
Yeah. Final thoughts on him. I mean, I think he's solid. I saw him miss some tackles in the run game, but listen, for me, you turn on that game against LSU, he had massive hits on Jaden Daniels. At the end of the day, this is a 7th round pick. If you can get a dude who's a special teamer, and for me, he showed the upside. Simply go watch those hits. Go watch on the hits he's put on, opposing running backs. Once again, there are times he goes for ankle tackle. There's times where he's, very hesitant. But at the end of the day, you're getting a dude who is versatile, who can play pretty much every position in the defensive back. And I think he'll be a pretty damn good special teamer. So, hey, show me the upside, hit a quarterback, and I think it'll be a solid special teamer.
Sound like a football guy.
Yeah.
Evan, what are your thoughts?
Not to sound like a broken record again. I just there's
man, he's about to cook. He's about to cook.
No, I look. They took Matt Lee a couple picks later. They got their interior offensive lineman that you can feel good about. Again, it just comes back to, and maybe this was like you said, they saw a guy who played 200 snaps in special teams and said, maybe he just gives us a little bit more depth. But again, if Tyson Anderson's on the roster, you're talking about safety 5, 6. Actually, no, it's 6 with him on there, isn't it? Because you'd have your 2 starters. You got Battle. You got so you'd be safety 5 now that they've officially moved Daxel to corner, right? Or you're talking about what, corner 7, corner 8, and again, Tyson Anderson's flashed. I know the injury is disappointing, but this is a guy we've seen make good plays in preseason, be a good special teamer that they really like, and is still under contract for 2 years. And then you've got DJ Ivey, who I know people were high on in his limited action. I was told that he could even be their cornerback 3 on the boundary because he played so well in his limited action, even coming off of it.
You sound like you believe that.
Well, no, I don't. It's funny how the narrative flip-flops as soon as this guy gets drafted. Now it's like, oh, we don't even need Tyson Anderson or DJ Ivey anymore. And it's just like you had these guys that gave you depth at the farthest point, right down your depth chart, not the next man up, but just interesting developmental special teams guys already. And again, I think there were other ways you could take some stabs. I know people have talked about running back. You could definitely get your choice of a priority free agent guy. I would have loved a guy like a Kendall Milton right here who could have been that poor man's Audric Estime in terms of just draft capital, but just a guy who can, again, contribute to you right now versus, hey, this is going to be a big battle now for our corner 7, corner 6, safety 5 spot. And now we might miss out on a guy who maybe has had bad luck with injuries, but has shown flashes in either DJ Ivey or Tyson Anderson, who I feel like have earned the good graces and respect of a guy like Darren Simmons, who have done ingratiated themselves with the team. And obviously, if Lou was ingratiated themselves,
ingratiated, we're learning.
If Lou is trusting you as a 7th round rookie in your first year, he probably has a pretty high opinion of you. So again, not a problem with the player. I'm looking at other positions where I'm like, man, you could have taken a shot on something here that had a little bit more payoff, because I just don't see a way that he cracks the lineup anytime in the next 2 to 3 years.
So let's go to the next pick, guys. Let's talk about the final pick the Bengals made. Center Matt Lee out of Miami. Want to hear your thoughts on this. And I know a lot of Bengals fans were pretty excited about this pick. I was excited about this pick. Number one, the Bengals finally got some interior offensive line help, but this is a guy that graded extremely high in PFF. We're talking about a guy who gave up 2 sacks in 2 years, or 1 sack, something. 1 sack in 2 years.
3. 1 sack in 3
1
years.
sack in 3 years to be corrected. And he seems like he has all the upside. Obviously, some of one of the knocks, one of them is he may maybe not be the strongest guy, but his hands are always in the right place at the right time. And this is a guy a lot of people felt the Bengals probably had a home run pick, especially with their final pick. And I think a lot of people were shocked that this guy was still available with the last pick, especially in the 7th round. So, Evan, what were your thoughts? Because I'm pretty sure you got a whole lot to say about this one.
Yeah, about time, right? I think that's what we were all thinking. And it's very fortunate that this worked out. When you look at the whole picture, you can say, okay, they got their interior offensive lineman. And for a lot of people, you can flip-flop this and the McKinley Jackson pick and feel a lot better about this draft all of a sudden, because I know for some people he was a top 100, top 150 player, right? So that does kind of help offset if you do those mental gymnastics. But again, they didn't know that he was going to be available at that point. So we have to critique the picks that came before with that in mind, right? Again, very fortunate that he fell to this point and ended up in their lap. Older player, like you said, has 5 years in college, but has 2 elite pass blocking grades, an 89.1 and 90.3 in his last 2 years, one at UCF, one at Miami of Florida. on true pass sets, he has 479. So very, very experienced. Compare that to an Amarius Mims who had 111.
Right.
And 479 snaps would be somewhere near the top of the class. If you got more than 300-400, you're doing really well, because especially in college these days, it's hard to get those true dropbacks where you don't have 3 rushers, don't have bubble screens, don't have the play action help. So good, like you said, good on combo blocks, maybe not quite the in-space athlete, but again, he fits the Bengals system perfectly for what they want to do for that. And this is a guy who does have upside that could unseat Trey Hill as that backup center role. Again, I'm so happy that they got a backup interior offensive lineman. It's just a shame that he doesn't have that guard versatility too, to try and keep Jackson Carman and Cody Ford off of the field.
I agree. Logan, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think when you look at the Matt Lee pick in terms of just value, where they got him, the projection, the role he plays, I think you can really argue that he was probably truly the best pick they made when you consider all of those factors. Yes, he's not the most talented pick they made. Yes, he's not going to make the biggest impact. When you're looking at the value you got in a 7th rounder and how he could come in and potentially start as soon as next year for you at a very important position, that's something that you can't just overlook. Obviously, Evan just alluded to all of his great PFF grades in the pass blocking game. That's very important when you have a team that throws the ball as much as we do. And again, there's so many things to like, but when you go and look, I like looking at the competition he played. And when you go turn on the film against Florida State, one of Braden Fisk's, a lot of favorite people's interior defensive lineman prospects, one of his lowest graded games came against Matt Lee. So it's just, it's some of those cool things to see him have success against a 2nd round draft pick that a team moved heaven and earth to go up and get. Matt Lee is just a good football player, man. He had no business being there in the 7th round. And, again, I don't know why we waited so long to address interior offensive line, but he is a damn good football player.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think my final thoughts, and I watched that Florida State game, and that was the one that kind of just like, hey, he's solid. The dude started 3 years at college at the center position. That is intelligence in the fact that, yes, he may not have the guard versatility, but at the end of the day, like, you're getting a 7th round pick. This isn't just some long shot. This isn't just some, toss a coin out there. This is a dude who is proven at the collegiate level against some of the top competition, and he's a fine pick. He's a fine pick. I could truly see him. And obviously people are saying, oh, he could potentially be the center of the future. I don't think that's a reach. You're not saying this is a project pick. No, this is a dude who started 3 full seasons at the collegiate level. That is impressive to do. So that alone makes him worth the 7th round pick. And I agree with you, Evan. Like, just the fact that they finally got interior offensive lineman.
And a good one at that.
And a very good one.
And like you alluded to there, man, Ted Karras, I know he's a great guy. I know he's done wonderful things for charity. I know he's been a stabilizing presence on that offensive line over the last couple of years that has been very, very refreshing. And we greatly, greatly appreciate that. We also need to reconcile that he will be 32 by the next time the offseason rolls around and the contract expires. And the history of the Bengals signing 32-year-old offensive linemen is not great. And so it is not a stretch to call him, like you said, the de facto heir apparent to Ted Karras right now. That's not disrespecting Ted Karras at all. It's just looking at where he is in his career, being realistic that, again, guys, I'm sorry, I know we get attached to these players, but the average NFL career span is 3 years anyways. And a lot of these guys move on after 2 to 3 years because of that being the nature of contract length, right? And then you get other teams, younger teams, that are going to be looking for a veteran like Ted Karras to stabilize their bad offensive line. And then they'll pay more in guarantees than the Bengals will because they have the money to do it. And again, this is just the nature of the business. 100%. And it's unfortunate that they're at the point where it seems like their best features for both the team and Ted might diverge a little bit there, but that's just the nature of the business. That's kind of the time we've come to, much like it was time to part ways with some other veterans like Joe Mixon. It's the natural kind of ending point and progression of the relationship and where he's at as a veteran.
It was just kind of funny. You brought up about how if you were to do the mental gymnastics and switch McKinley Jackson and the Matt Lee pick, looking at it enough, McKinley Jackson's his 2nd worst graded game against this year was against Matt Lee. So I don't know if that makes it better or worse, but just good to know there.
No, good point. I like that bit of trivia.
For sure. Want to also remind you guys, if you guys can do us a huge favor, if you're not already, please subscribe to the YouTube channel, turn on post notifications so you guys don't miss when we go live or upload content from the First Star Logistics studio. Guys, since January 1st, we've been on a tear with content, man. I'm talking about like close to 175 pieces of content uploaded since January 1st. So again, guys, we have content coming out almost every single day for the Bengals, non-Bengals, NFL as a whole. We just did a video recently talking about Shadur Sanders and that whole 9 yards and seeing what his future holds. So again, we also do the sit down Malik Wright on this YouTube channel where I go into depth about a lot of other teams. Might talk about the Bengals, might talk about UFC. You just never know where the world of sports might take us. But the last thing I want to highlight before we head out of here, guys, Austin McNamara. I don't usually talk about undrafted free agents.
Yeah.
But this is a guy that's a punter, came from Texas Tech, put up gaudy numbers. You guys may have known him for that viral punt that went almost like 97. Like it wound up being close to like 100 end zone, like 100 yards after the wind helped. But this is a guy that could 100% overtake the starting punting job. Punting has been an issue for the Cincinnati Bengals. I know people probably scoff at it and say, "Oh, punting." No, but let's talk about this for a quick second. This is I feel like when you look at a guy in Brad Robbins, he was brought in for his hang time and his ability to pretty much virtually erase, kickoff returns or punt back returns, if you will, punt returns. And this is a dude in Austin McNamara that absolutely just drills and changes the field position and gives you a true weapon. So when you talk about Austin McNamara, a punter that can come in and potentially solve Darren Simmons punting issues that's been rearing its ugly head for quite some time now, man, this could be a difference maker. And one can go a step further that, had Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals had better field position on the defense side of the ball, they may have headed right back to their second Super Bowl. You know what I mean? It's all the matter of, do you have a punter, a specialist that can change the field position? Because honestly, in our league, punting has become, having a reliable punter is a weapon.
Yes. Yeah.
It's a weapon, especially being considered this offense. And I also think that it also helps your defense. Your defense is not consistently playing at a disadvantage. I know there are some people out there that think that we're automatically tied to Brad Robbins, but I certainly don't think that we are. Oh. And when you think about Austin McNamara and what he could potentially bring to the table, I think that they bring different things. I think that if you're looking for the consistency, you're looking for a guy to absolutely drill the ball and change the field position, I think Austin McNamara might be your guy. Yeah. Now, Brad Robbins can come into the preseason and absolutely be improved. We don't know. I know he's capable of it. It's about a consistency thing. We saw him drill what did he drill a 60 or 65-yard punt earlier this season. We know we saw him do it twice, actually. Once against the Arizona Cardinals, once against Tennessee Titans.
And the competition's good.
Yeah. Competition breeds success. I believe that in every field and everything that you do. And I don't mean to highlight punter or talk anymore about it, because I know some people are like, Malik, shut up. It's punter.
It's important though.
But trust me, that has been the difference at point in times, regarding the Bengals moving forward. I think Austin McNamara could be different. Some people are calling him another punt god, if you will. I think that term God is being used a little bit loosely. Does anybody have anything else that they want to add about Austin McNamara and the potential that he could bring? Logan, it seems like something on the tip of your tongue.
That's just why you don't draft punters.
Yeah.
Because you can often find the
especially
best
in the fourth round.
Yeah. Yeah, that was crazy, by the way. But just don't draft punters. Don't really even draft specialists, really. The best ones come from UDFA.
It is crazy when you think about it, though, because it feels like the Bengals have had such a hard time at finding a reliable punter.
Yes.
It just, for some reason, you look at other teams and it's like, why can't we have that?
Yep.
Like, right? Why can't we have that? Why can't we have that guy that absolutely drills the ball and changes field position for us and gives us an opportunity to, put up more points on the board, or whatever the case may be? Help our defense out. Bengals haven't had that for a little bit. Daniel, what did you want to add?
No, yeah, I'm with you. You cannot be happy / confident in Brad Robbins right now. Like, Brad Robbins deserves a chance to, win the job, yes. But at the end of the day, last year was not something you cannot say, hey, we are sold on Brad Robbins. He deserves a chance, sure, to be competition. But hey, there was a couple of guys in free agency that you had to go out and get, and you got one of them.
It's like the Bengals just miss out on that guy. Looks like, think about it. They could have drafted the guy from the Patriots. I forgot his name. The punter that they got, man. It's gonna come to me. But a long story short, you look at it, it's like, man, the Bengals could have done so many different things. Like, that could have helped them with the punting situation.
Yeah.
Hasn't worked out yet, but you're hopeful that this one could. You're hopeful that this one could. But guys, that's all the time that we have here for State of the Jungle, live from the new First Star Logistics studio, man. I love this studio, man. I'm pretty pumped up about it. The lighting is good. Hopefully, you guys can see how crisp my hairline is. But we appreciate you guys for joining us for another episode. And all you guys commenting in the comment section. I know that we didn't get to the questions like we usually do. This was one of our longer shows, 1 hour and 43 minutes, guys.
Wow.
Well, a lot to unpack here. And I
Crazy.
feel like we still haven't divulged into everything that we could have talked about. But that will be for a later show and a later date to obviously talk more about these things. And that's where we hope to see you guys next week, live on State of Jungle. Make sure you guys give this video a like, subscribe to the YouTube channel, turn on post notifications so you guys don't miss when we go live. Make sure you also subscribe to the First Star Media Group YouTube channel, because there you can catch Bengals on the Brain with Joe Goodberry. You can catch In the Trenches with Dave Lapham. And if you like me enough, maybe you can catch the Sit Down Malik Wright or State of the Jungle with me and the boys again next Wednesday, same time, same crew, same place. But until